Today I'm going to look at replacing the auger drive belt on this old Sears Craftsman snowblower. I was using it last night to clear the driveway after a storm, and I sucked up a large rock, and that ended up having the effect of throwing the drive belt off, or the auger drive belt, and I was able to get it back on last night, but in the process I noticed that the belt that was on the machine was kind of chewed up after the incident. It was able to stay together long enough to finish the driveway, but right at the end of the job it fell off again. So I'm going to replace it with this belt here, which is actually an old belt that came off the machine a couple of years ago. I had replaced all the belts on the machine, and since the old belts were actually in good shape, I saved them. And so I'm going to put this one back on. It looks like it's in pretty good shape. It's in better shape than the one that's on the machine right now anyway, so I'll use this one. Okay, in order to get started here and drain the gas out, I'm going to remove this cover right here, and that's achieved by just removing these two thumb screws. Okay, with the thumb screws out of the way, the cover will just kind of pop up, and the choke lever here will pop off, so I'll just set that aside. And then this should just come up and out of the way, and I'll let that dangle off to the side. You can see here that it's held on with the kill switch wires. I'm not going to bother taking those off. I'm just going to leave them there and let that hang. It won't be in the way. So then with that out of the way, the next thing to do is to remove this. This is the fuel tube that comes from the tank. So there's a clip on there that I'll remove with a pair of needle nose pliers. I'll just pull this up and let the fuel drain back into the gas tank. Okay, now with the clip out of the way, I can just pull off the hose. Okay, now I'm going to open the tank just to let some air in so that the fuel will run faster. Now I should be able to pull that out and just kind of let it drain, hopefully without making too much of a mess. If I had an extension hose or something like that, it would make this easier. Well, I've got all the fuel drained out of the machine, and I've put the cover back on and the choke lever and all of that stuff. Now the next thing that I'll do is I will remove the belt cover here, and you can see on my machine the belt cover is under this homemade metal shield, and this just helps melted snow from dripping down into the belts and friction wheel and causing the drive to slip. That seems to work pretty well. But I need to take that off, which is held on with these two bolts up here, and then the cover itself is just held on with a couple of bolts down here, one on each side. And these don't even need to come all the way out. They just need to be loosened up, and the cover will slip up and out. Okay, now with all the bolts loosened up and out of the way, I should be able to just pull this off. You can see that's fished out. Now, you can see mine's got some residue from some spray foam on it, which is another thing that I've done to kind of mitigate snow melt getting down into the drive mechanism and causing it to slip. So that might need to be redone at some point. Okay, you can see down here now into the drive mechanism. And here's the auger belt, and it's slipped off the main drive pulley. This is the tensioner for the auger that engages or disengages the auger. And you can kind of see there, there's snow falling in there now, but it's not even on the auger pulley. So the belt itself is a little chewed up. I'm not sure if it's quite evident in this video, and it's also upside down now. Now you can see here I've got the machine stood up on its nose, and what I'm going to do is remove this bottom cover, and there are just 4 bolts holding that on, 2 here and then 2 down here. And just like the belt cover, these bolts don't need to come all the way out. They can just be loosened and this cover can pop. Okay, that should be loose enough now. I'll just use a screwdriver to kind of pop it off. So the top will pop out, and then it will just slide up like that. You can see lots of junk in there. With the bottom cover off, you can see everything's exposed here. This is the pulley that runs the auger, and this, of course, is the belt in question that is off. So the idea here is going to be to try and fish it out of here in between that gap that you can see between the auger pulley and the drive plate, the friction plate there. And it'll come off, but it's a little bit of a trick just because there's a guide pin and the actuator lever for the auger tensioner kind of in the way, but this should slip out and fish in this gap here without taking anything else apart. So what I'll do is try and get the belt kind of up, and this is just going to be a back and forth kind of operation, I think. You know, walking between this side of the machine and the other side here, where you can see the other side of the belt and the main drive pulley and everything. So I'll just kind of work at it here and try and fish it out of all the mechanisms. So you can see here that the tensioner for the auger belt and namely that guide pin are kind of the main things that are holding the belt from coming out freely at this point. So in order to help the situation, you can kind of see here if I actually activate the lever for the auger, it pushes the tensioner in and kind of gets that pin out of the way. So because I don't have 3 arms, what I'm going to do is wrap a bungee cord around the lever here just to hold it in place, and then I can continue to fish the belt out. Okay, so there's the bungee cord holding the lever in place, and now hopefully that'll help kind of get this thing so that I can get it out of here. Okay, you can see there that it just took a little bit of brute force to get the belt off. And now if I can get the camera to focus on this, you can see not only is the belt flipped inside out at this point, it's pretty well chewed up on the edges there. So when it fell off last night, it must have got stuck in there and chewed up a little bit and maybe even stretched a bit. Or it could have just been stretched from use. But there you can see even that side is kind of compromised, so it's probably a good idea to change this even if it were fully functional. Okay, so now I've got the new, actually the old belt, but the better belt, I guess is the better way to put it, ready to go in. And this is going to be sort of a reverse of what I just did, and that is trying to fish it in around the main auger pulley here while clearing the tensioner and the guide pin. So I'm just going to start trying to do that. And this belt is a little thicker, so it might not be quite as easy to do. Now what I found is a large screwdriver helps. I'm going to get around from the other side and kind of push on the belt. There's a little more room to try and guide it in this spot here in between the tensioner and the pulley. Okay, I figured I'd kind of try to show it mid-process if I can get some light in there and get the camera at the right angle. You can see where I'm trying to fish the belt around the pulley and behind the springs and the lever that are on the tensioner for the. Okay, let's see how visible this is. You can hopefully see there that now I've got the belt slipped down around the pulley. It's kind of freely running in the channel that it needs to. So now I should be able to just kind of get it roughly on the pulley back here, and then go around to the front of the machine, or top of the machine, however you want to look at it. And now you can kind of see the belt is more or less in the orientation it needs to be, behind the guide pin and behind the tensioner. So now I just need to bring it up, and I think what I'm going to do is just do it like this. I'm going to put it on the drive pulley, and of course this is a little tricky with one hand and screwed up gloves, but there, now you can see it's on the drive pulley. So now it'll need to kind of fish behind the idler, or the tensioner, and I may need to release my bungee cord in order to let the tensioner kind of spring back out of the way. Okay, this all appears to be on now properly. You can see the belt is threaded around the drive pulley behind this guide pin that's here, and then behind the tensioner, which you can see when I activate the lever, it puts some tension on the belt and allows it to engage the auger pulley, and this is all wrapped around behind that guide pin there, and everything looks like it's good down here. Now that the belt is back on the machine, I'll start the reassembly process by putting the bottom cover back on. And I'm just going to slip these two forks, or whatever you want to call them, over the bolts that I loosened up before. I may need to loosen those a little more. Get those on, and that'll act like a hinge, kind of up and over, and then I should be able to slide the top cover back in place. And I've got to line up. There's 3 tabs up here. I don't know if it's in the shot or not, but there's 3 tabs on top of the cover that slip into slots in the machine body, and also on the sides of the cover kind of slips around the bolts. So this is a little bit of a brute force type of thing. Okay, so that's in, and I'll tighten up the bolts now. Before I go any further with the reassembly process, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to start the machine, and I'm going to check the operation of the pulley there and the belt, and make sure that everything is running true, and make sure that nothing is bent. I think the problem was caused by that old belt that was just chewed up, but I'm not positive that something isn't bent or out of alignment in there. So we'll give it a shot. There should be enough gas in the carburetor to let it run for a few minutes anyway, or a minute or two. Okay, you could probably see from the video everything looked like it was okay. There might be a little play in there in the belt. There might be a little more than there should be. I'm not exactly sure how much tension should be on here. I may try and look that up and see if there's any specs online or anything about it. But it looked like everything was running true. It didn't look like anything was bent or out of alignment or loose or any of that sort of thing. So from that regard, I think it's okay. Okay, so I'm going to continue on the reassembly here. Hopefully my battery holds up. It's getting low. And the next thing that I'll do is just put this cover back on. And it just goes back in place and slips over the bolts better down here. Okay, now that the belt cover is on and tight, I can replace my melt shield. Okay, that should just about do it. I'll put a little gas in the machine and then give it a try. See if it blows some snow. That's going to do it for the replacement of the auger drive belt on this old Craftsman Snowblower. If you feel like leaving a comment or subscribing, feel free to do so. And as always, thank you for watching.